Vanessa was already discussing selling part of the company while our father was still in intensive care. Leah froze in the doorway as she heard her sisters speak to the bank like the decision had already been made. In that moment, she realized the meeting had started without her, and somehow she was the only one who didn't know the company was no longer hers to run. It didn't feel sudden. It felt planned. The room was too organized for a crisis. Chairs pulled into a half circle, documents stacked in neat piles. Water glasses placed within reach like this had been scheduled, not assembled in panic. Leah didn't move. She stayed just outside the frame of the doorway, listening. The bank representative was speaking now. Mid-50s, gray suit, measured voice. If the property is partially leveraged, we can structure flexibility without triggering immediate covenant pressure. Property. Leveraged. Flexibility. Words Leah had spent years translating into real consequences. Jobs. Payroll. Machines that didn't stop running just because someone wanted liquidity. Vanessa nodded like she understood all of it, like she had always understood. "We don't need full exposure," she said calmly. "Just enough to create breathing room." Breathing room. Leah felt something twist inside her chest. That wasn't how her father talked about money. That wasn't how Mercer had survived. That was how people spoke right before they lost control of something they didn't fully respect. Leah stepped into the room. No one greeted her. No one looked surprised. That was the first real hit. They knew she would come, and they had started without her anyway. Vanessa glanced at her briefly, then back to the bank, as if Leah entering didn't change the direction of the conversation at all. That was worse than confrontation. It was dismissal. Leah's voice came out sharper than she intended. "What is this?" The room shifted slightly, not in chaos, in adjustment, like a meeting pausing for a minor interruption. Uncle Dan cleared his throat. "We're reviewing options." Options. Leah repeated it in her head. Options that involved selling part of the company while their father was lying in a hospital bed. She looked directly at Vanessa. "Since when do we review options without me?" Vanessa didn't hesitate. Since Dad transferred authority. There it was. Clean. Flat. Delivered like a fact no one should question. Leah felt the words hit before she could process them. Transferred when? Last night. Leah stared at her. Last night was a blur of hospital corridors and fluorescent lights and the sound of machines monitoring a man who had never looked small until that moment. He had been drifting in and out, barely able to focus, barely able to speak. And somehow he had reviewed documents, made decisions, transferred control of a company. It didn't fit. Not logically, not physically, not humanly. Leah took another step forward. "I want to see what he signed." Vanessa picked up a folder from the table, held it for a second, then placed it back down. "You will? Not right now?" Leah let out a breath. Short, sharp. "So, this is happening, and I'm supposed to wait." Vanessa met her eyes. Yes. No explanation, no apology, just yes. The bank rep shifted slightly. One of the lawyers adjusted his stance. Still, no one intervened. Because the meeting had already accepted one reality. Vanessa was in control. Paper or not, that belief had already taken root. Leah turned to her mother. "Mom?" Helen sat stiff in the chair, hands locked together. "We need to stay calm." "Calm?" Leah almost laughed. "Dad is in intensive care and you're sitting here talking about selling parts of his company." Helen's eyes flickered. "It's temporary. Temporary." The same word again. Leah turned back to Vanessa. "How long have you been planning this?" Vanessa didn't answer. That silence was louder than anything she could have said. Leah felt it click into place. This wasn't a reaction. This was timing. Everything about the room confirmed it. Lawyers ready. Bank already briefed. documents printed. This had shape before tonight. Leah's voice dropped. Who else knew? No one answered. That told her enough. Leah looked at Derek. He was leaning against the wall, watching everything like he belonged there. Why is he here? Vanessa didn't even look at him. He understands the financial side. Leah's jaw tightened. He doesn't work here. Vanessa's tone hardened slightly. He understands leverage. That word landed differently now, not theory, intent. Leah looked back at the table, at the documents, at the way no one else reached for them, at the way Vanessa's hand rested near the folder like a boundary. I want to see the signatures. Vanessa's response was immediate. Tomorrow, not now. Leah shook her head slightly. No, now. Vanessa didn't move. This is not the time. Same line, same control. Leah felt something crack. Not explosive, cold, quiet. She realized something worse than being pushed out. She'd already been replaced, not officially, but functionally. The meeting was happening. Decisions were being discussed, and her presence didn't change anything. That was the humiliation. Not loud, not dramatic, final. Leah looked around the room one more time, at every face. People who used to call her first when something broke. People who trusted her to keep things running. Now they stood there waiting for Vanessa to continue. Not her, Vanessa. Leah straightened. Her hands were shaking. She forced them still. Then she said it. I'm not going to let this happen quietly. Vanessa nodded once. Like she expected that. We'll talk tomorrow. That was it. Dismissed. Not asked to leave. Not removed. Just made irrelevant. Leah stood there for one more second. Then turned. Walked out of the room. Behind her, the conversation resumed low, controlled like nothing had been interrupted at all. That was the final confirmation. They had already moved on. Outside, the rain hit harder. Cold against her face. Leah stepped off the porch slowly, her breathing uneven, her thoughts racing. But beneath all of it, something sharper had begun to form. Not anger, not panic, a question. If Vanessa could move this fast in the middle of a hospital night with lawyers with the bank, with documents already prepared, then those documents had to have been created before tonight. Leah stopped halfway to her car, turned back slightly toward the house. The lights inside were still bright, voices still steady, like nothing about this was fragile. That was the mistake. Because things built this fast usually don't hold up under pressure. Leah got into her car, closed the door, sat there in the dark. Hands still shaking, eyes fixed on the house. And for the first time since walking into that room, she wasn't thinking about what she had just lost. She was thinking about proof. Because if this was planned, then somewhere something didn't line up, and that was where everything would break. Leah did not drive away right away. The engine stayed off. Rain hit the windshield in uneven patterns, sliding down in thin lines that blurred the house into something softer than it really was. Inside, the lights were still on. Shadows moved behind the curtains. Voices carried faintly through the walls, steady, controlled. Like nothing unstable had just happened. Leah gripped the steering wheel. Her fingers were still shaking, but her breathing had slowed. Not calm, focused. Because once the shock passed, something else took over. Pattern. She replayed the room in her head. Not the emotions, the details, the bank rep already there. The lawyers with printed documents. The way Vanessa didn't hesitate. The way Uncle Dan didn't question. The way her mother didn't look surprised. That wasn't reaction. That was alignment, and alignment takes time. Leah started the car. The dashboard lit up. 6:41 p.m. She stared at the clock, then at her phone, then back at the house. If the documents were real, they had to exist somewhere beyond that living room. Filed, recorded, stamped. Because Vanessa didn't strike her as someone who would rely on anything informal, not for something this big. Leah pulled out of the driveway. Slow, deliberate, her mind already moving ahead of her. She didn't go home. She drove straight toward the hospital, Riverside Methodist. The parking garage smelled like oil and damp concrete. She parked on the level 3, sat there for a second, then got out. Inside, everything was the same as a few hours earlier. Fluorescent lights, muted footsteps, machines beeping behind closed doors. Her father was still in the same room, same monitors, same shallow rhythm of breathing. Nothing about him looked like a man who had made executive decisions that afternoon. Leah stood at the doorway, didn't go in yet. She watched him, trying to reconcile two realities. The man in the bed and the man who had supposedly signed away a control of everything. It didn't match, not even close. A nurse passed by and gave her a small nod. Leah stepped inside. Her father didn't open his eyes. His hand rested near the blanket. Still, heavy, Leah moved closer, lowered her voice. "Dad," no response. She tried again, soft, closer, "Dad." His eyelids shifted slightly, then opened. Slow, unfocused. He looked at her, but not fully, like he was still somewhere else. Leah forced her voice steady. "Did you sign anything tonight?" A pause. Too long. He blinked, frowned slightly. "Papers." The word came out dry, uncertain. Leah leaned closer. "What papers?" He swallowed, winced slightly. Too many. That was it. No clarity, no certainty, just confusion. Leah felt her chest tighten. "Did you give Vanessa control?" Another pause, longer this time. He looked at her, but his eyes didn't settle. He was searching, for memory, for context, for something that wasn't fully there. His voice faded. He turned his head slightly, tired. Leah stood there watching him slip back into that fog, and in that moment she knew. Whatever had happened, it had not been clear. It had not been deliberate. It had not been what Vanessa made it sound like. Leah stepped back. Her heart was beating faster now. Not panic, recognition. She left the room quietly, closed the door halfway, and the second she stepped into the hallway, she pulled out her phone. First call. Marisol. It rang twice, then picked up. "Hey, everything okay?" Leah didn't answer that. She went straight to it. "Did anything get filed today?" A pause. "What kind of filing?" "Anything. Executive change, authority, ownership." There was silence on the other end. Then Marisol spoke slower. "Why?" Leah leaned against the wall. "Because Vanessa just told a room full of people she has control." Another pause. Longer. "Okay, give me a minute." Leah waited, watching nurses move past, listening to the low hum of the hospital. 30 seconds, then a minute, then Marisol came back. There was something. Leah straightened. "What?" "I saw a notification earlier. Didn't think much of it at the time. State filing confirmation. Timestamp." Leah's grip tightened. "When?" Marisol exhaled slightly. 11:17. Leah closed her eyes for a second. 11:17. She pictured the hospital again. The monitors, the nurses, her father barely conscious. There was no window where he had calmly reviewed documents and made structured decisions. No version of reality where that timeline made sense. What kind of filing? I didn't open it. It got pulled into restricted access pretty fast. But the header looked like officer change. Leah's pulse spiked. Officer change. That wasn't temporary. That wasn't emergency. That was structural. Who requested it? Came through Vanessa's office. Of course. Leah pushed off the wall. Started walking toward the exit. Anything else? Marisol hesitated. Then said something that made everything sharper. "Derek was in finance twice today. asking about credit lines. Leah stopped walking. Credit lines, why? I don't know, but it didn't feel routine. Nothing about today feels routine. Leah didn't respond, because now the pieces were starting to connect. Not fully, but enough. Authority change, late-night filing, bank already involved, credit discussions. This wasn't just about control, this was about money. Leah ended the call. Walked out of the hospital. The night air felt colder now, sharper, more real. She got back into her car. Sat there again. But this time her hands weren't shaking the same way. They were steady, tight. Because the question had changed. It wasn't what just happened anymore. It was why now. And more importantly, how fast had this actually been set up? Leah started the engine. The headlights cut through the rain. And for the first time since stepping into that room, she wasn't trying to understand Vanessa. She was trying to trace her. Because if something was filed at 11:17, then somewhere there was a record. And records didn't care about family, they cared about time. And time was already starting to expose something Vanessa couldn't control. Leah didn't go home that night. She drove until the rain thinned out and the streets emptied. Then she pulled into a 24-hour diner off the highway. The kind with flickering neon and booths that still smelled faintly like coffee soaked into vinyl over years. She took the corner booth, back to the wall, habit, control. A waitress came over with a tired smile and a pot of coffee already in her hand. Leah nodded once. Didn't trust her voice yet. The coffee was too hot. She drank it anyway, because staying sharp mattered more than comfort now. She pulled out her phone, opened notes, started writing. Not feelings, facts. Time of hospital admission. Approximate window of consciousness, 11:17 filing. Bank present tonight. Lawyers prepared? Derek asking about credit lines. She stared at the list, then added one more line. Prepared before tonight. That was the center of it. Not reaction, preparation. Leah leaned back slightly, closed her eyes for 2 seconds, then opened them again. Because something else had started to bother her. Not just what Vanessa did. How? Vanessa wasn't operational. She didn't know filings. She didn't know timing windows. She didn't know how to move authority that fast without tripping over process. Someone helped her. Or something had already been set up. Leah picked up her phone again, scrolled, then called a number she hadn't dialed in months, Evan Rourke. It rang longer than she expected. Then clicked. Yeah, his voice was rough, half awake. Leah didn't apologize. I need you. Pause. That woke him up. What kind of need? Legal, urgent. Another pause. Then he shifted tone. What happened? Leah didn't dramatize. She laid it out. Fast, clean. Vanessa claimed authority, said it was signed last night, bank already involved. State filing at 11:17, possible officer change. Rourke didn't interrupt. That was why she called him. He listened. When she finished, there was silence for a second. Then he said the first useful sentence of the night. If this is real, it leaves a trail. Leah exhaled slowly. That was what she needed. Not reassurance, direction. What kind of trail? Filings, notary, internal authorizations, maybe power of attorney. Depends how aggressive she went. Leah stared at the table. How fast can someone do this legally? Fast, if documents already exist. Slower if they don't. That answer hit. Documents already exist. Leah leaned forward. You think this started before tonight? Rourke didn't hesitate. If the bank is already in the room, it didn't start tonight. That confirmed it. Out loud, real. Leah felt something settle. Not calm. Focus. What do I do? Short term, get access to filings. Tomorrow morning, county, state, anywhere she touched. And don't confront her again without paper. Leah almost laughed. Too late for that. Rourke ignored it. Emotion helps her. Paper helps you. That landed hard. Leah wrote it down. Emotion helps her, paper helps you. What about the hospital? Careful. Memory, under medication, is unreliable. But timeline matters, exact timeline. Leah nodded slightly to herself. Okay, I'll call you in the morning. Do that. And Leah. She paused. Yeah. If she moved this fast, she's either very confident or she's exposed. Leah ended the call. Sat there for a moment. The diner was quiet. A truck driver 2 booths down. A TV playing muted news no one was watching. The world felt normal. Too normal. Leah looked back at her notes, then added one more line. Confidence or exposure. She underlined it, then she pulled out her wallet, flipped through it. Old receipts, cards, nothing useful. But the motion helped, grounded her. She checked the time again. 1:12 a.m., too late to access records, too early to stop. She needed something else, something closer. Leah opened her phone again, scrolled, found the internal company directory she still had cached. Then she stopped on one name. Ben Walsh, production manager, 12 years, saw everything, said little. She hesitated, then called. It rang 4 times, then picked up. Leah. His voice was groggy. Sorry, I know it's late. He sat up on the other end. What's going on? Leah didn't ease into it. Did anything happen today that didn't make sense? A pause. Define didn't make sense. Anything unusual. People in finance, visitors, documents. Another pause, longer this time. Yeah, Leah leaned forward. What? Derek was here. Leah's jaw tightened. Doing what? Talking to accounting. Asking about equipment values, loan exposure, things like that. Loan exposure. Leah closed her eyes for a second. He doesn't work here, I know. But no one stopped him. That part didn't surprise her anymore. What else? Ben exhaled. There was a print request, large batch, legal documents, late afternoon. Who requested it? Came through Vanessa's login. Leah's grip tightened on the phone. How late? Close to end of day, before closing. That mattered. That was before the hospital crisis escalated, before the ambulance, before everything. Meaning, documents existed before the emergency. Leah felt the full shape of it start to form. Not complete, but enough. Ben spoke again. Leah. Yeah, this feels off. Leah looked at the table, at her notes, at the lines connecting faster now. It is silence on the line. Then Ben said something that locked it in. She also asked about who had signature authority if your dad couldn't sign. Leah's breath slowed. That was it. That was the question that started everything. Not after the hospital, before. This wasn't a reaction. This was a plan waiting for a trigger. Leah ended the call. Sat back in the booth. Stared at nothing for a few seconds. Then everything aligned. The meeting, the bank, the filing, the timing, the questions earlier that day. It all pointed to one thing. Vanessa hadn't taken advantage of a crisis. She had been waiting for one. Leah stood up, left cash on the table, walked out into the cold air. The rain had stopped. The street was quiet. For the first time that night, she didn't feel like she was chasing something. She felt like she was closing in, because now the story had changed. This wasn't about proving Vanessa was wrong. It was about proving this had been set up before their father ever collapsed. And if that was true, then somewhere there was a mistake. Something that didn't line up. Something rushed. Something overlooked. Leah got into her car, started the engine, and as the headlights cut through the dark road, she understood exactly where she was going in the morning. Not the company, not the house. Records. Because people could lie. Families could lie. But timestamps never did. Leah arrived at the county recorder's office before it opened. The sky was still gray, the parking lot half empty. A maintenance worker was hosing down the front steps, water running in thin streams along the concrete like nothing important had ever happened there. Leah sat in her car for a minute, hands still, breathing steady, no coffee this time. She needed clarity more than stimulation. At 8:59, she got out. By 9:01, she was inside. The building smelled like paper and dust and something faintly chemical from old cleaning supplies. A woman behind the counter looked up. Routine expression. Neutral. Leah asked for access to recent business filings tied to Mercer entities. The woman nodded, showed her the terminal. Standard process. No urgency, no awareness. That helped, because whatever Vanessa had done, it still lived inside systems that didn't care about family drama. Leah started with Mercer millwork. Nothing immediately unusual. Routine filings, old amendments, insurance updates. Then she moved to related entities. Mercer Industrial Holdings, the property company. That was where things changed. A new entry. Dated yesterday. Leah clicked it. Memorandum of Authority. She read the first line, then the second, then stopped. Her eyes moved slower after that, because now every word mattered. The document granted Vanessa Mercer Hall authority over financing decisions, leasing actions, and asset-related transactions tied to the property entity. Not temporary, not limited, broad, very broad. Leah felt her pulse shift. This wasn't emergency continuity, this was control. She scrolled down. Signature section. Her father's name, below it initials. Then a signature, it looked like his. At a glance. Shaky, uneven, but familiar enough to pass. Leah stared at it. Something didn't feel right. Not the shape, the context. She checked the timestamp again. Filed yesterday, but that didn't mean signed yesterday. She looked for notary details. Found it. Name, Evelyn Pike. Commission number, location, Upper Arlington. Leah leaned back slightly. Upper Arlington, not the hospital. She stared at that line. Read it again, same. Upper Arlington, that didn't make sense. Her father hadn't left the hospital, not for a second. Not after admission, not after stabilization, not after being hooked to monitors. There was no gap, no window, no possibility. Leah's hand moved to her phone. She opened her notes, wrote it down. Notary location mismatch. She underlined it, then circled it, because that wasn't a small detail, that was structural. If the notarization didn't match physical reality, then something in the process had been bypassed, or rushed, or faked. Leah went back to the document. Scrolled slower this time, looking for anything else. Page formatting, margins, spacing. Then she saw it. Page numbers. 1, 2, 3, then later page 5. She frowned, scrolled back. There was no page 4. Her stomach tightened. She checked again, still missing. She opened another filing, compared format, consistent numbering, clean sequence. She went back. Page 4 didn't exist. Not in the file, not in the structure. Meaning something had been compiled, or removed, or replaced. Leah felt her breathing change again. Faster. Focused. She took photos of the screen. Multiple angles, zoomed in, zoomed out. Because once this disappeared, she would need proof it had ever looked like this. She stepped away from the terminal, walked toward the exit, but stopped halfway, turned back. Because one thing still bothered her. The time. She went back to the filing metadata. Opened details. Submission time, 11:17 p.m. Leah stared at it. That number again. Same as the notification Marisol saw. Same as the window her father could barely stay awake. She closed her eyes for a second, then opened them. Because now the question was no longer did something go wrong. It was how much. Leah walked out of the building. The air outside felt colder. Sharper, more real. She got into her car, closed the door, sat there. Didn't start the engine yet. She pulled out her phone, called Rourke. He picked up on the second ring. Yeah, Leah didn't ease into it. Notary location is wrong. Pause. Explain. Upper Arlington, not the hospital. And the filing has a missing page. Another pause. Longer this time. Then his tone changed. That's not a mistake. Leah stared straight ahead. I know. What else? Broad authority, property control, financing rights, not temporary, not limited. Rourke exhaled slowly. Okay. Now we're not guessing anymore. That landed. Because up until now everything had been suspicion. Now it had shape. What does this mean? It means if we push, this doesn't stay internal. Leah tightened her grip on the phone. Push? How? Records demand, immediate, and possibly injunctive relief. Leah nodded slightly, even though he couldn't see it. Do it. Rourke didn't hesitate. I will. Then he added one more thing. And Leah. Yeah, don't confront her yet. Leah almost smiled. Too late for that. Rourke ignored it. From this point on, everything is paper. That was the shift, clear, final. Leah ended the call. Sat there in silence, then finally started the engine. As the car pulled out of the parking lot, she glanced at her phone again. At the photos. At the timestamp. At the notary location. At the missing page. Pieces. Not foolproof yet, but enough to crack something open. Because Vanessa had moved fast, too fast, and when people move that fast, they don't get everything right. Leah turned onto the main road. Traffic starting to build. Morning, fully awake now. For the first time since this started, she wasn't reacting. She was building a case. And cases didn't depend on who sounded more convincing. They depended on what could be proven. Leah pressed the gas slightly harder. Because now, it wasn't just about getting her position back. It was about exposing how it had been taken. And once that started, there was no quiet way to end it anymore. The letter went out before noon. Rourke sent it on heavy paper with language that didn't ask. It required. Demand for inspection of books and records. Preservation notice, no deletion, no alteration, no movement of assets. Every Mercer entity listed. Every officer named. Every pathway closed. Leah read the draft once, then again. Not for meaning, for tone. It sounded like a door being locked from the outside. That helped, because everything until now had felt like doors closing on her. By 1:15 p.m., Vanessa had received it. By 1:20, the company knew something was wrong. Not officially, but in the way information travels through a building faster than any email. Leah didn't go to the office. Not yet. She stayed in her car across the street from a small legal supply store, engine off, phone in her hand. Waiting. At 1:32, Marisol called. Her voice was lower than usual. They got it. Leah sat up slightly. Reaction. Quiet, but not calm. Vanessa went straight into the conference room with outside counsel. Derek's here too. Leah closed her eyes briefly. Of course he was. What about staff? Everyone's pretending nothing's happening. But no one's working. That made sense. Work doesn't continue normally when authority becomes uncertain. It pauses. It listens. It waits. Leah tapped her fingers lightly against the steering wheel. Any movement on finance, yeah. That came fast. Marisol exhaled slightly. They pulled a file request. Internal, debt schedules, equipment valuations, everything Derek was asking about yesterday. Leah's jaw tightened, still pushing, even now, even after being challenged. This wasn't panic, this was commitment. What about the bank? They haven't called yet. But they're going to. Leah nodded to herself, because once a legal notice hits, banks don't ignore it. They reassess, they slow down. And slowing down was exactly what Vanessa couldn't afford right now. Leah ended the call. Sat still for a second. Then started the engine. This time, she drove to the office. Not to go inside, just to see. The Mercer building looked the same from the outside. Clean lines, neutral glass, the sign still polished. Nothing about it showed what was happening inside. Leah parked across the street. Watched. People moving in and out, normal pace, but their posture was different. Tighter. More aware. A delivery truck backed up slower than usual. A supervisor stepped outside, checked his phone, then went back in without looking up. That was how instability looked in real life. Subtle, constant. Leah didn't go in, because this part wasn't about presence, it was about pressure. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. "This is Leah." Pause. Then Vanessa. "You moved fast." Leah didn't respond immediately. Let the silence sit. Vanessa filled it. "You didn't even ask me first." Leah's voice was calm now. "I did. Last night. You told me to wait." A breath on the other end. That wasn't the same thing. It was. Another pause. Short, controlled. Vanessa shifted tone. "You're escalating this." Leah looked at the building. At the place she had spent most of her life keeping stable. "No, you did." Silence again. Then Vanessa spoke more quietly. "This doesn't have to turn into something public." Leah almost smiled. There it was. Not denial, containment. That told her everything. Leah spoke slowly, then opened the documents. All of them. "Now." Vanessa didn't answer. Leah continued, "Including the notary record." This time the silence was longer, heavier, because that landed. Leah could hear it, even without seeing her. Vanessa finally spoke. "You don't understand what you're doing." Leah's grip on the phone tightened slightly. "No, I understand exactly." Another breath. Sharp. Then Vanessa dropped the tone. This company was going to break. Leah didn't react. That was new. Vanessa continued. "You keep it running, but you don't grow it, you don't scale it, you don't protect it from what's coming." Leah stared straight ahead. "And your solution is to leverage it while he's in the hospital." "It's not that simple, it is." Silence. Then Vanessa said something that almost worked. "I was trying to fix what he wouldn't." Leah closed her eyes briefly, because that part almost sounded true. But not enough, not like this, not with missing pages, not with wrong locations, not with 1117 timestamps. Leah opened her eyes. "Then you should have done it in daylight." That line landed hard. Vanessa didn't respond. Leah spoke again. "Now it's paper, and paper doesn't care what you meant." That ended it. Vanessa hung up. Leah lowered the phone slowly, looked back at the building. Nothing outside had changed, but inside everything had, because now it wasn't just a power shift, it was a challenge. Formal, legal, documented, and those don't disappear quietly. Her phone buzzed again. "Rourke, we're filing." Leah nodded once. "Do it." "Emergency motion. We freeze anything tied to property or financing until this is resolved." Leah felt something solid settle in her chest. For the first time, this wasn't just reaction. It was control. "What do you need from me? Affidavit, timeline, everything you told me." And Leah. "Yeah, we're not arguing anymore. We're proving." That was the shift, clear, irreversible. Leah ended the call. Sat there for a moment, then looked at the building one last time. Because from here on, this wasn't going to be handled in living rooms, or quiet conversations, or family negotiations. This was going to move through records, through filings, through things that couldn't be smoothed over. And once that started, there was no version of the story where everything went back to normal. Leah started the car, pulled into traffic, and as she drove away, she understood something that hadn't been clear before. This wasn't about getting her position back. It was about exposing what Vanessa had already put into motion. Because if the documents didn't hold, then neither did her control. And if her control didn't hold, then everything she built it on was about to collapse with it. The motion went in just before closing. Rourke filed it electronically, then called Leah with the kind of quiet certainty that meant the next part would move fast whether anyone was ready or not. By 5:40, Mercer's outside counsel had been served. By 6:10, the bank had acknowledged receipt. By 6:28, someone inside the company forwarded a screenshot of the filing notice to a group chat that was not supposed to exist. By 7, everyone knew. Not details, not facts. But enough to stop normal. Leah didn't go home. She drove past the plant once, saw lights still on in the admin wing, then kept going. She needed space, distance. Somewhere, the company wasn't breathing down her neck. She ended up in a grocery store parking lot she didn't remember choosing. Engine off, phone in her hand, waiting again. But this time it felt different. Not chasing, holding. Because once a legal motion is filed, the timeline shifts. People who were confident start calculating. People who were quiet start watching. And people who moved too fast start making mistakes. Her phone buzzed. Marisol. They stopped everything. Leah sat up. What do you mean everything? Meetings canceled. Derek got asked to leave the building. Leah blinked, asked or told. Told. By who? Uncle Dan. That mattered. More than anything else so far. Because Uncle Dan didn't move unless the ground under him shifted. Leah felt something click. The room was breaking. What about Vanessa? She's still here, with counsel. Doors closed. Leah nodded slowly. That made sense. Control doesn't disappear. It compresses. What about the bank? They called. Asked for clarification. No one answered yet. That was even bigger. Banks don't like silence. Silence means risk. Leah ended the call. Sat there for a second. Then exhaled slowly. Because this was the first real change in momentum. Not emotional, structural. She pulled up the photos from the recorder's office again. The notary, the missing page, the timestamp. She zoomed in on the signature. Stared at it longer this time. Not the shape, the pressure, the way the ink faded at the end. Her father's signatures usually ended firm, even when rushed, even when tired. This one trailed off, weak, interrupted. Like the hand that made it wasn't fully steady or wasn't fully there. Leah felt a chill moved through her. Because now it wasn't just timing. It was condition. She opened her notes, added another line. Signature inconsistency. Then under it, condition of signer. She stared at those words. Because if that was true, this wasn't just aggressive, it was dangerous. Her phone rang. Rourke. You saw the bank response. Leah nodded. Yeah, they're pausing. Good. Leah leaned back. What's next? We push harder. Leah didn't hesitate. Do it. We're requesting full production. Native files. Metadata. Everything tied to the execution. Leah's grip tightened slightly. Metadata. That meant timestamps, edit history, sequence. The things people forget to clean when they move too fast. You think we'll get it. Not willingly, but the court will lean on them. Leah looked out the windshield. At nothing. Just dark. And a few cars passing through. What about the notary? Pause. Then Rourke spoke slower. That's where this gets serious. Leah didn't move. Explain. If the notarization didn't happen where it says it did, then either procedure was bypassed or someone certified something they shouldn't have. Leah swallowed. And if that's true, then the whole chain weakens. That was it. That was the crack. Not emotional, legal, structural. The kind that doesn't get patched quietly. Leah closed her eyes for a second, then opened them. Push it. Rourke didn't hesitate. I will. Then he added one more thing. We need someone inside to confirm sequence. Leah already knew who. Marisol. Leah ended the call, immediately dialed. Marisol picked up faster this time. Tell me everything you saw today. No filter, no guessing. Just facts. Marisol took a breath. Okay. Leah listened. Derek came in early. Before most staff, went straight to finance. Asked for equipment valuations again. Then around mid-afternoon, legal documents got printed. large batch. After that, Vanessa had a closed door with counsel. Then the hospital call happened. Leah's chest tightened. What hospital call? From your mom. She told Vanessa your dad was being moved to intensive care. Leah froze. What time? Around 4. Leah did the math. Documents printed before that. Authority already in motion before the condition escalated. She spoke slowly. So, everything was already ready. Yeah, Marisol hesitated. Then added something else. There was a draft earlier this week. Leah sat forward. What draft? I saw part of it on someone's screen. Didn't read everything. But it looked like authority language, not full, but close. Leah felt it lock in. Not just preparation. Ongoing preparation, days, maybe longer. This wasn't triggered by the hospital. The hospital was the moment they used. Leah's voice dropped. You're sure? Marisol didn't hesitate. Yeah, Leah ended the call. Sat there in silence. The pieces weren't scattered anymore. They were lining. Timeline, documents, bank, Derek, the notary, the filing. All of it pointed to the same thing. This didn't start last night. It just finished last night. Leah leaned her head back against the seat, closed her eyes. Because now the weight of it hit differently. Not shock, not confusion. Clarity. And clarity is heavier. Because once you see it, you can't pretend you don't. Her phone buzzed again. New message from an unknown number. She opened it. It was a photo. A screen. Internal company system authority list, her name removed. Vanessa listed as primary. Timestamp, earlier that afternoon. Before the hospital escalation. Leah stared at it, then zoomed in, then read the time again. There it was. Proof, not final, but enough to break the illusion. She sat up slowly, because now this wasn't just about the challenging documents. It was about exposing sequence, and sequence was what would destroy everything Vanessa built. Leah started the car. The engine hummed quietly. Her hands steady now, no shaking, no hesitation, because the direction was clear. Tomorrow, this stopped being a dispute. It became evidence. And once evidence entered the room, no one got to control the story anymore. Not Vanessa, not the family, not even her, only the truth and whatever it revealed. The second hearing was scheduled faster than anyone expected. Not days, hours. Emergency calendar. 8:30 a.m., Leah didn't sleep. She didn't try. She sat at her kitchen table with a legal pad, writing the timeline again and again until it stopped feeling like something she needed to convince herself of. Hospital admission, document print, authority draft, system change, filing at 11:17, notary location mismatch. Each piece alone could be explained. Together they told a story, not clean, not pretty, but real. At 7:50 she was already outside the courthouse. Cold air, gray sky, people moving with purpose that had nothing to do with her life falling apart and being rebuilt at the same time. She watched Vanessa arrive, black coat, hair perfect, face composed. Derek behind her. Tighter now, less confident. Leah noticed that, because pressure changes posture before it changes words. They didn't look at each other. Not yet. Inside, the courtroom felt smaller than it should have. Wood benches, muted lighting, the quiet hum of something old and procedural. Rourke sat beside Leah, flipping through a thin stack of documents. No drama, no performance, just preparation. That steadiness grounded her. We don't argue, we show. He said it without looking at her. Leah nodded, because she understood now. This wasn't about winning a conversation. It was about letting the facts speak in a room where no one could interrupt them. Vanessa's counsel started. Controlled. Professional. They framed everything as emergency continuity. A daughter stepping in when her father couldn't. A company protected from instability. It sounded reasonable. That was the danger, because bad decisions rarely present themselves as chaos. They present themselves as solutions. Leah felt her chest tighten, not from doubt, from recognition. That version of the story could work if no one looked too closely. Then Rourke stood. No build-up, no theatrics. He walked the timeline, step by step, clear, simple, undeniable. Documents printed before hospital escalation. Authority draft existing before emergency. Internal system changes made earlier in the day. Filing at 11:17. Then the notary. Location listed. Upper Arlington. Not the hospital. He paused there, just long enough, because that was the fracture. Vanessa's counsel shifted, offered explanations, clerical, formatting, process variations. Words meant to blur edges. Then Rourke introduced the hospital record summary. Not full medical detail, just enough. Admission time, continuous monitoring. No discharge, no off-site movement. Leah watched the judge. The moment it clicked, it wasn't dramatic, just a slight pause in writing. That was all. But it was enough because that meant the story no longer fit cleanly. Vanessa's counsel tried to pivot, suggested pre-signed pages, delayed acknowledgement, standard practice, but it didn't land the same, because now every explanation had to stretch to cover too many things. And stretched explanations break. Rourke didn't press harder. He didn't need to. He just added one more piece. Internal system change timestamp. Leah's removal. Vanessa's addition. Before the hospital escalation. That was the shift. Clear, irreversible. The room felt different after that. Not louder, heavier, because now it wasn't about interpretation. It was about sequence. And sequence doesn't lie. The judge leaned back slightly, looked at both sides, then spoke. Not long, not dramatic, but final enough. Interim authority is suspended. No asset movement, no financing actions. Full records to be produced, immediate. Leah felt it before she processed it. Not relief, release. Like something tight in her chest had finally let go. Not because everything was fixed, but because it had stopped getting worse. Vanessa didn't react immediately. She sat still. Too still. Then slowly she looked at Leah. For the first time since this started, there was something there that hadn't been before. Not anger, not control. Something closer to realization. Leah held the gaze, didn't look away. Because this wasn't about dominance anymore, it was about truth landing. And truth doesn't need volume, it just needs time. Outside the courtroom, the world felt too normal again. People walking, cars moving, nothing announcing that something had just shifted in a quiet room. Marisol texted. "What happened?" Leah replied. "We stopped it. 3 words, simple, enough." Rourke stepped beside her. "This isn't over." Leah nodded. "I know." He looked at her for a second, then added something she didn't expect. "But you were right about the timing. That mattered. Not for ego, for clarity." Leah watched Vanessa exit the building. Derek tried to speak to her. She ignored him. Walked straight ahead. Faster than before. Leah noticed that too, because now the roles had changed. Not completely, but enough. For the first time, Vanessa wasn't ahead of the situation. She was reacting to it. Leah stood there a moment longer, then turned. Walked down the steps, into the cold air, because now the fight had moved to a different place, not to control, exposure. And once exposure starts, it doesn't stop halfway. It keeps going until everything is seen clearly, whether anyone is ready for it or not. The building felt different the moment Leah walked back in. Not louder, not quieter. Just aware. The receptionist looked up too quickly, then smiled like she wasn't sure what the right version of normal was supposed to be. Leah nodded once. Didn't slow down. Didn't explain. Because nothing about this was normal anymore. The hallway smelled like fresh coffee and printer heat. Same as always, but the people weren't. Conversation stopped half a second earlier than they should. Eyes followed her a fraction longer. Not hostile, not supportive. Measuring, that was the word. Everyone was measuring what this meant now. Leah walked straight to the conference room. The same room where Vanessa had been meeting with counsel just yesterday. The door was open. Inside, papers were still stacked in tight, careful piles. Water glasses half full. A legal pad with notes written in sharp, controlled handwriting. Vanessa's. Leah didn't touch anything. She stood there for a moment, looking, because this was where control had lived for the last 24 hours. And now it didn't. That shift wasn't loud, but it was complete. Her phone buzzed. Marisol, you're here. Leah turned. Marisol was standing halfway down the hall, holding a folder tighter than usual. Her eyes looked different. Less unsure, more direct. That was new. Leah walked toward her. What's the situation? Marisol handed her the folder. Full stop on finance actions. Everything tied to property or debt is frozen. Leah flipped it open. Internal notice, short, direct. Issued under council instruction after the hearing. No approvals, no changes, no movement. That was control. Real control, not declared, enforced. What about staff? They're waiting. For what? For direction. Leah closed the folder. Took a breath. Because this was the moment that mattered more than the courtroom. This was where perception became reality. She nodded toward the floor. Let's walk. They moved together down the hallway. Into the main operations area. Machines running, people working. But the rhythm was off. Too careful, too quiet between tasks. Ben Walsh spotted her first. He didn't wave, didn't call out. He just walked over, stopped a few feet away, looked at her, then said one thing. What are we doing? Not aggressive, not emotional, practical. Leah respected that. She answered the same way. We keep running. Ben nodded slowly. Anything changing? Leah held his gaze. Not today, that mattered. Because uncertainty spreads fastest when people think everything is about to shift. Stability had to be visible, even if it was temporary. Ben turned slightly, said something to the nearest team. Work picked back up, not fully normal, but moving. That was enough. Leah stepped back, watched for a moment, then turned toward Marisol again. What else? Marisol hesitated, then lowered her voice. Vanessa's still here. Leah's eyes shifted. Where? Office, with counsel. Leah didn't react immediately, just nodded. Because she had expected that. Control doesn't disappear. It compresses, it regroups, it waits. You want to talk to her? Leah thought for a second, then shook her head. Not yet, that mattered, because this wasn't about confrontation anymore. It was about sequence. Let her move first. Marisol nodded, understood. Leah handed the folder back, then walked toward her old office. The door was closed. She opened it slowly. Nothing inside had changed. Same desk, same chair, same stack of operational reports she had left 2 days ago, but something felt off. She stepped in, closed the door behind her, walked to the desk, and then she saw it. A folder, not hers, left slightly off-center, like someone had opened it quickly and didn't bother to place it back exactly. Leah stared at it for a second, then reached out, opened it. Inside draft documents, not finalized, not filed, but close. Authority language, earlier version. Different formatting, different structure. She flipped through the pages, fast, then slower, because now she was looking for something specific. Evolution. What changed from draft to final? Her eyes stopped. A section on authority scope, narrow, limited. Then in the later pages expanded, broader, including property control, including financing rights. Added later. She could see it, not just feel it, The language didn't match. The tone shifted, like two different versions had been merged. Leah's pulse slowed, not from calm, from confirmation. This wasn't a clean document. It was built, changed, expanded, and rushed. She took photos, every page, every detail, then closed the folder exactly how she found it, placed it back, stepped away, because this wasn't hers to keep, not yet, but it was enough. Her phone buzzed. Message from Rourke. "We got partial production," Leah replied. "I found a draft." Pause. Then his response. "Good. That's how we show intent." Leah looked around the office, at the place she had built her routine, her control, her identity, and for the first time since this started, she didn't feel like she had to fight for it. Because now, this wasn't about who was louder, or who moved first. It was about what could be proven. And proof was already starting to take shape. Leah turned, opened the door, stepped back into the hallway, where everything still looked the same, but wasn't. Because once a system breaks, it never goes back to what it was. It becomes something else. Something more careful, more exposed, more real. And now, so did she. The full records did not come all at once. They arrived in pieces, delayed, filtered, cleaned where possible. And that told Leah more than the documents themselves. Because when people control the order of information, they are trying to control what lands first. Rourke called it staging. Leah called it buying time. By the third day, the first production set hit her inbox. Board consent drafts, email chains, partial signature packets. Nothing explosive on its own. But Leah didn't read for impact anymore. She read for sequence, time, language. Who spoke first? Who edited? Who approved? That was where truth lived. She sat at her kitchen table, laptop open, a legal pad beside her. Same routine, different purpose. The first email chain started 3 days before the hospital. Vanessa to outside counsel. Subject line simple, contingency planning. Leah stared at it for a second, then opened it. Vanessa asked what authority mechanisms existed if leadership became temporarily unavailable. Clean question, reasonable. But the reply was where it shifted. Council outlined options. Temporary delegation, board approval, emergency officer designation. Then a follow-up. Vanessa asked whether property authority could be included to support financial flexibility. Leah's hand tightened slightly on the pen. There it was, before anything happened, before the hospital, before the collapse, property, finance, already in the conversation. She wrote it down, then kept reading. Second chain, Derek added, not formally, forwarded thread, commenting, pushing. Asking about leverage structures, timing windows, execution speed. He wasn't just present, he was driving direction. Leah felt something settle deeper. Not anger, recognition. This had been shaped, step by step, not rushed in panic, built. Then she opened the next set. Draft versions. She compared them side by side with the folder she found in her office. Earlier draft, narrow authority, later draft, expanded scope, final version. Even broader. Each step moved the same direction. More control, more reach, more risk. Leah leaned back slightly, because now it wasn't just suspicion, it was progression. Intent forming over time. Not a single bad decision. A series of them. Then she opened the metadata file. Timestamps, edit history, user activity. This was where people forget to hide things. Her eyes scanned quickly, then stopped. An edit at 3:12 p.m., same day. Authority section expanded. User, V. Mercer, another edit. 3:47 p.m. Language adjusted. User, external counsel, then another. 4:08 p.m. formatting change, user, unknown. That one caught her. Unknown. She clicked into it. The user ID didn't match internal staff. didn't match counsel. She cross-checked, then found it. A temporary login, created that same day, assigned through admin. Leah's breath slowed, because now this wasn't just about Vanessa. Someone else had been given access. Temporary, fast, untracked. She pulled up the internal system screenshot she received earlier. Authority change. Timestamp. Earlier that afternoon. Before the hospital escalation. Before the ICU transfer. Before everything. Leah stared at both timelines side by side. They matched too well. Preparation, execution, then trigger. That was the order, not the other way around. Her phone buzzed. Marisol, you seeing this? Leah didn't look up. Yeah. Marisol's voice was tighter now. They're trying to explain it as contingency. Leah almost smiled. Of course they were. That was the cleanest version. The most defensible. But it didn't hold any more. Not with sequence. Not with edits. Not with pre-event activity. What about Vanessa? She's still pushing that narrative. Leah nodded slightly, because that was all she had left. If this stayed about intention, it could be debated. If it stayed about sequence, it couldn't. Leah spoke slowly. We stay on timeline. Marisol understood immediately. Okay. Leah ended the call. Went back to the screen. One more file, email, short, from Derek. Time-stamped 5:22 p.m., the night of the hospital. If this goes through tonight, we move before anyone slows it down. Leah read it again. Then again, because there it was. The urgency, the window, the reason everything had to happen fast. Not because of the hospital, because of what would happen after. Questions. Review. Delay. They weren't reacting to a crisis. They were using it. Leah closed the laptop slowly. Sat there in silence. Because this was the moment everything became clear. Not emotionally, structurally. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't poor judgment. This was timing. Calculated, measured, executed, and flawed. Because they moved too fast. Because they assumed no one would trace it. Because they believed control, once declared, would hold. Leah stood up. Walked to the window, looked out. The street was quiet, normal, unaware. She rested her hand against the glass. Cold, steady. Because now the story had changed again. Not just proving something went wrong. Proving when it started, and once that became clear, everything else followed. Leah picked up her phone, called Rourke. We have sequence, pause. Then his voice sharpened. How clean. Leah looked back at the laptop. At the notes, at the timeline she had written and rewritten. Clean enough. Another pause. Then one sentence. That's what wins this. Leah ended the call. Stood there for a moment longer, then turned away from the window. Because now it wasn't about finding anything else. It was about presenting what was already there. And once that happened, there was no version of this where it stayed contained. Because sequence doesn't just show what happened, it shows intention. And intention is what everything would break on next. The next hearing was set for Friday morning. 3 days. That was all the space between what Leah knew and what the court would see. Rourke didn't waste a minute. He turned sequence into structure. Exhibits numbered. Timelines aligned. Emails anchored to edits. Edits anchored to filings. Filings anchored to the hospital clock. Leah sat across from him in his office, watching him strip the story down to what could survive challenge. No emotion, no narrative, just proof. This happened first, then this, nothing out of order, nothing assumed. That was the discipline, because the moment something felt exaggerated, everything weakened. Leah learned that fast. He slid a document across the table. This is your affidavit. She picked it up, read the first line. I, Leah Mercer, declare under penalty of perjury. The words felt heavier than anything she had said out loud so far. because this wasn't a conversation. This was record. Permanent. She read through it slowly. Her role, her ownership, her operational authority, the timeline of events, the meeting at the house, the hospital condition, the filing discovery, the draft document found in her office. All of it. Clean, controlled, accurate. Rourke watched her. Anything wrong? Leah shook her head. No. Then he added something. We don't need everything. We need what holds. That mattered. Because there was so much more she could say, so much emotion, so much history. None of it belonged here. She signed. The pen felt heavier than it should have, then lighter when it was done. Rourke took the document, added it to the stack. That's your voice in the record now. Leah nodded. Because that was what this had become. Not who she could convince. What she could prove. The night before the hearing, Leah didn't stay home. She drove to the plant. Parked across from the loading docks. Same spot as before, lights still on. Machines still running. The building didn't know it was at the center of something. It just kept working. That steadiness grounded her, because everything else had been unstable. But this was real. Her phone buzzed. Message from Vanessa. We should talk before tomorrow. Leah stared at the screen. Didn't answer right away, then typed. Say it. The reply came quickly. This doesn't have to go further. Leah almost smiled. There it was again. Containment. Always containment, she typed back. It already has. Pause. Then another message. You're going to damage the company. Leah looked at the building. At the place that had been stable long before either of them tried to control it. No, I'm stopping you from damaging it. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then one final message. You don't understand what was at risk. Leah stared at it, then typed slowly. I do. That was the difference now. She did understand. Not just the numbers, the pressure, the fear, the need to act. But understanding didn't excuse what came next. Leah put the phone down. Didn't respond again, because there was nothing left to say outside the courtroom. The next morning, the courtroom felt different. Not physically, but in weight, because now both sides knew what was coming. Vanessa looked sharper, more controlled, but her stillness was tighter now, more effort behind it. Derek wasn't there. That was new. Leah noticed immediately, because absence matters. Rourke stood when it began, no build-up, no framing. He started with sequence, projected timeline, clear, precise, undeniable. Emails before the hospital, draft edits before escalation. System changes before ICU, filing at 11:17. Notary mismatch, each piece placed exactly where it belonged. No overlap, no confusion. Vanessa's counsel tried to interrupt, tried to reframe, but it didn't land the same way anymore. Because once sequence is clear, narrative loses power. Then came the email, the one that mattered most. If this goes through tonight, we move before anyone slows it down. Leah watched the room. The shift was small, but real, because that sentence didn't describe reaction. It described timing, intent, awareness. Vanessa's counsel stood, objected, argued context, argued interpretation. But the words were already in the room. And once words like that land, they don't leave. Rourke didn't push harder. He didn't need to. He stepped back, let it sit. The judge looked down at the documents, then at Vanessa, then at Leah. Then spoke, not loud, not dramatic, but final enough. The authority transfer is invalid pending full review. All actions taken under it are suspended. Full production continues, and any further attempt to execute financial or property actions without court approval will be considered a violation. Leah felt it in her chest. Not like a win, like a release, because the structure had held, the timeline had held, the truth had held. Vanessa didn't move immediately. Then slowly she looked down. Not at Leah. At the table, at the documents. At the pieces of something she had built now laid out in a way she couldn't control anymore. Leah watched her, not with anger, not with satisfaction, with clarity, because this was the moment everything shifted. Not control, not power, exposure. And once something is exposed, it doesn't go back. Outside the courtroom, the air felt sharper, colder, cleaner. Rourke stepped beside her. That was the break. Leah nodded. Yeah. He looked at her. Then added something quieter. You stayed on the right thing. Leah understood what he meant. Not emotion, not argument, sequence. She watched Vanessa walk past. Alone this time. No Derek, no shield. Just her, moving faster than before. Leah didn't call out, didn't follow. Because now there was nothing left to chase. The story had already turned, and once it turns, everything after is just consequence. The silence after the ruling didn't feel like victory. It felt like space, unfamiliar, unstable in a different way. Because for days, everything had been pressure and reaction. Now there was room for things to surface, and not all of them were clean. Leah returned to the office the next morning. No rush, no urgency, just steady steps through the same hallway that had felt so different only days before. People still watched her, but the look had changed. Less uncertainty, more alignment. Not loyalty, not yet, but direction. Ben gave her a small nod from across the floor. Marisol didn't need to say anything. The work had already started moving again. Not fast, but real. Leah stepped into her office, closed the door, sat down. For the first time since this began, she didn't open her laptop immediately. She just sat. Because something else was waiting now. Not the company, not the case. Family. Her phone buzzed. Message from her mother. Can you come by today? Leah stared at it, then looked away, then back again. Because this was the part she couldn't control with documents. She typed one word. Okay. The house felt smaller than she remembered. Or maybe quieter. The same furniture, the same framed photos, but the energy was different, less certain. Her mother opened the door, didn't smile, didn't avoid her either. Just stepped aside. Leah walked in. The living room was already set, same chairs, same arrangement. But this time there were no lawyers. No bank rep, no formal meeting, just family. Her mother, Uncle Dan, and Vanessa sitting in the same chair as before. Leah stopped in the doorway for a second. Not frozen, just aware, then walked in. Took a seat. No one spoke immediately. Because this wasn't a conversation anyone had rehearsed. Her mother finally broke it. Soft. Your father asked about you this morning. Leah's chest tightened slightly. How is he? Better. More aware. That mattered. More than anything else in the room. Leah nodded once. Good. Silence again. Then Uncle Dan leaned forward. Hands together, measured. We need to understand what happens next. Leah looked at him. Not defensive, just direct. The court will review everything. Full production. Until then, nothing moves. He nodded slowly. Processing. Vanessa hadn't spoken yet. She sat still, hands resting on her lap, eyes down. Different from before, not composed. Contained. Leah noticed that. Because it meant something had shifted. Her mother spoke again. This has gone further than it needed to. Leah didn't react immediately. Then answered. It didn't start with me. That landed. Not harsh, just true. Vanessa finally looked up. Her voice was quieter than Leah expected. I wasn't trying to take it from you. Leah held her gaze. Then what were you doing? Vanessa exhaled. Slow. Like she'd been holding that answer for days, trying to stop it from collapsing. Leah didn't interrupt, didn't soften. Because now it had to be said clearly. Then you should have said that. Vanessa looked down again. I didn't think there was time. Leah's voice stayed steady. There was. You just chose a different way. Silence filled the room again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was full of everything that had been avoided. Uncle Dan spoke again. Careful. What matters now is keeping the company stable. Leah nodded. It is. Then looked at Vanessa. That's all that matters now. Not who controls it. Not who moves first. Stability. Vanessa's eyes lifted slightly. There was something there. Not agreement. Not resistance. Something in between. Because for the first time, this wasn't about winning. It was about what came after. Leah stood. The conversation wasn't resolved, but it didn't need to be, not yet. She looked at her mother, then at Uncle Dan, then at Vanessa. We'll let the process finish. That was it. No threat, no emotion, just direction. She turned, walked toward the door. Her mother called after her. Leah. She stopped, turned slightly. Your father wants to see you. Leah nodded. I'll go now. The hospital felt different this time. Less urgent, more present. Her father was awake when she walked in, really awake. His eyes focused. Clearer. He looked at her. Then something softened. Leah stepped closer, sat down beside him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he said her name. Slow, but steady. Leah. She felt it, not as relief, as something deeper, grounding. She took his hand. Warm, real. You okay? He nodded slightly, then frowned, confusion still there. What happened? Leah looked at him, then answered carefully. We're fixing it. He studied her face, like he was trying to piece together something he couldn't fully remember. Then he nodded again. Trust, simple, unspoken. Leah sat there a moment longer, because this was the center of everything. Not the company, not the court. This. Then she stood, adjusted the blanket slightly, and stepped back. As she walked out of the room, she understood something clearly. This was no longer about proving anything. That part was already done. What came next was about what they chose to build after everything had been exposed. And that part would be harder, because it couldn't be forced, only lived. The full production came in waves, not clean, not organized, but complete enough. Server exports, email archives, draft histories, access logs. Everything Vanessa's side had tried to control now laid out in a format that no one could rearrange. Leah didn't go through it alone. She sat with Rourke and a forensic analyst in a quiet room that smelled like paper and stale coffee. Screens lit, files open. Timelines running side by side. This was the part most people never see. Not dramatic, not emotional, just slow truth. The analyst spoke in short sentences. User access created at 2:51 p.m. temporary credentials. Deactivated at 11:36 p.m. Leah wrote it down. Then another. Document draft created 3:06 p.m. Authority expanded 3:12 p.m. External edits 3:47 p.m. She followed each line. Matched them to what she already knew. Nothing broke, nothing contradicted. That was the point. Because truth doesn't need to stretch, it holds. Then came the notary record. Digital confirmation. Timestamp, location ping. Upper Arlington static, unchanged. Leah stared at it for a second longer than necessary, because this was the piece that didn't just weaken the document. It broke the chain. The analyst looked at her. There's no movement log for your father leaving the hospital. Leah nodded. I know. He clicked again, opened one more file. Signature capture log. Leah leaned forward. The system showed time of capture, but not location. That was normal. What wasn't normal was the duration. 4 seconds. Leah frowned slightly. Explain. He pointed. The signature input window was open for 4 seconds, then closed. No correction, no retry. Leah felt it land. Too fast. Even for someone healthy, even for someone steady. Her father hadn't been either. That wasn't proof of anything on its own, but paired with everything else, it told a story. Rushed, not reviewed, not deliberate. Rawork leaned back. That's enough. Leah looked at him. Not everything. He shook his head slightly. We don't need everything. We need what holds under pressure. Same rule, same discipline. Leah nodded. Because she understood now, overload weakens. Clarity wins. The final hearing came the following week. No urgency label this time, just full review. The courtroom felt different again. Less tension, more inevitability, because by now everyone knew where this was going. Vanessa sat with counsel, still composed, but the edge was gone. Derek wasn't there, not even outside. That absence had settled into something permanent. Rourke presented. No change in tone, no escalation, just structure, sequence. Proof? He didn't repeat everything. He didn't need to. He selected, placed, connected. The email chain, the draft evolution, the metadata, the notary mismatch, the signature timing, each piece reinforcing the next, no gaps, no leaps. Vanessa's counsel spoke after. Shorter this time, more careful, less confident, because the argument had nowhere to expand. Every path led back to the same problem. Sequence, intent, execution, all misaligned. The judge took longer before speaking. Not because it was unclear, because it was final. When he did, his voice was steady. The authority transfer is void. All actions taken under it are without effect. Control reverts to prior structure. Further review may proceed regarding process violations. That was it. No drama, no emphasis, just outcome. Leah felt it in her chest again, not like a win, like something settling into place, where it should have been. Vanessa didn't look at her, not this time. She stayed still, eyes forward, hands folded, accepting something she could no longer shape. Outside, the air felt warmer, not by much, but enough. Rourke stepped beside Leah. That's the end of the legal part. Leah nodded. Yeah, he looked at her, then added quietly, the rest is yours. That part mattered more, because now there was no court, no filings, no motions, just decisions. Leah returned to the office that afternoon. No announcement, no meeting. She walked through the same hallway, into the same space. But this time, no one stopped working. No one watched her too closely. Things moved. Steady. Normal. Ben gave her a small nod. Marisol handed her a folder without needing to explain it. The company had already adjusted. That was the truth. It didn't belong to any one person. It belonged to what worked. Leah stepped into her office, closed the door, sat down, the same desk, the same chair. But something inside her had shifted. Not stronger, clearer. Her phone buzzed. A message from Vanessa. Short, I'm stepping back. Leah read it once, then again. No explanation. No defense. Just that. Leah didn't respond immediately. She placed the phone down, looked around the room, then picked it back up. Typed, okay. She didn't add anything else, because there was nothing else to say. Later that evening, Leah drove past the house again. Slower this time. Lights on, quiet, no meeting, no pressure. Just a place. She didn't stop. She kept driving. Because some things didn't need to be revisited. Not now, not like before. The next morning, she went to the hospital again. Her father was sitting up, more alert, more present. He looked at her, then smiled, slightly. Small, but real. Leah sat beside him. Didn't explain everything. Didn't need to. He studied her face, then asked one thing. Is it okay? Leah held his gaze, then nodded. It is. He leaned back, closed his eyes for a second. Relief, simple, unspoken. Leah sat there a moment longer, then stood, adjusted the chair, and stepped back. As she walked out of the room, she understood something clearly. This wasn't a story about taking something back. It was a story about not letting it be taken the wrong way. The company would keep running. The family would take longer. Some things would stay unresolved. Some things would settle quietly over time. That was real. That was how it worked. Leah stepped outside. Morning air, cool, clean. She took a breath, then walked forward. Not chasing anything, not proving anything, just moving. Because for the first time since this started, everything was where it needed to be. And that was enough. Vanessa didn't leave the company immediately. She didn't make a scene, didn't disappear. She just became quieter, which somehow made everything heavier. Leah noticed it on the third day after the ruling. Not because Vanessa came to her, but because she didn't. No messages. No attempts to explain. No effort to fix the narrative. Just silence. And silence like that is never empty. It means something is settling or breaking. Leah was in her office reviewing operational reports when Marisol knocked lightly. Not rushed, but not casual either. Leah looked up. "Yeah." Marisol stepped in. Vanessa asked if you have a minute. Leah didn't respond immediately, just held her gaze. Where? Back conference room, the same one. That detail mattered. Because it wasn't neutral ground. It was where everything had started to go wrong. Leah closed the folder in front of her. Took a breath, then stood. Okay, the walk down the hallway felt different this time. Not tense, not uncertain, just direct. No one stopped her. No one watched too closely. The building had already adjusted. This part was personal now. Leah pushed the door open. Vanessa was already inside. No counsel, no documents spread across the table, just one chair and a folder in front of her. She looked up. For a second, neither of them spoke, because there was no version of this conversation that could be rehearsed. Leah stepped in, closed the door, didn't sit immediately. Vanessa broke the silence first. I read everything. Leah stayed standing. Everything. Vanessa nodded slightly. The emails, the drafts, the logs. Her voice was steady, but thinner. Leah watched her, then asked the only question that mattered now. And Vanessa exhaled slowly, like she had been holding that answer longer than anything else. I knew it went further than he understood. Leah didn't move, didn't react, because that was it. That was the line everything had been circling. Vanessa continued, not all of it, but enough. Leah's voice stayed level. Enough to what? Vanessa looked down at the table, then back up. Enough to get control. Silence filled the room, but it wasn't explosive. It was heavy, settled. Leah walked forward, pulled out the chair, sat down across from her. For the first time, they were in the same position. No one above, no one outside. Just two people, facing what had already happened. Leah spoke slowly. You could have told me. Vanessa's jaw tightened slightly. I didn't think you'd agree. Leah held her gaze. You didn't give me the chance. Vanessa looked away for a second, then back. Because I didn't want to risk losing the window. That word again, window. Leah leaned back slightly. There it is. Vanessa didn't deny it, didn't soften it, just sat with it. Leah continued. You weren't reacting, you were waiting. Vanessa nodded, barely. Yes, that was the truth. Clean, uncomfortable, unavoidable. Leah let the silence sit, because there was no need to push further. Not for facts, they were already clear. So she shifted. Why? Vanessa didn't answer immediately. Her fingers moved slightly on the edge of the folder, then stopped. Because I thought if I didn't do it, then it would never change. Leah studied her. Not judging, not agreeing, just understanding. And that was the difference now. Understanding didn't mean accepting. Leah spoke again. So you chose control over trust. Vanessa's voice dropped. I chose certainty. Leah nodded slowly. That made sense. Even if it was wrong. Even if it cost everything. They sat there for a moment. The tension wasn't sharp anymore. It was something else. recognition of who they were, of how they made decisions, of what separated them. Vanessa pushed the folder slightly forward. Inside were documents. Not legal filings, internal memos, resignation of authority, voluntary, structured, prepared. Leah looked at them, then at Vanessa. "You're stepping back." Vanessa nodded. "I already did." Leah didn't reach for the folder yet. "Why?" Vanessa's answer came faster this time. "Because even if I was right about the risk, I was wrong about how I handled it." That was the closest thing to an apology she would give. And Leah understood that. She didn't need more. She didn't need softer words. She needed truth. And this was it. Leah finally reached forward, closed the folder. Didn't open it. Not yet. Because this wasn't about paperwork anymore. It was about something harder. What happens now? Vanessa looked at her. For the first time without calculation. "You run it." Leah shook her head slightly. "That's not what I asked." Vanessa paused, then answered more carefully. "We figure out how not to do this again." That landed, because that was the real ending. Not who won, not who lost, what changed. Leah stood, picked up the folder, then looked back at her. "You don't get to disappear from this." Vanessa held her gaze. "I know." Leah nodded once, then turned, walked to the door. But before she opened it, she stopped. Not turning back, just speaking. "Next time, there isn't a window." Vanessa didn't respond. She didn't need to, because they both understood. Leah opened the door, stepped back into the hallway, where everything was moving again. Normal, functional, but not the same, because now the truth wasn't hidden inside documents. It was out, between them, and once that happens, there's no going back to before. Only forward. Different. Clearer and harder to break. The company didn't celebrate. There was no announcement. No meeting where people stood and clapped. No moment that marked a clear ending. It just kept running. Orders processed, machines moved, phones rang. And that was the point. Because stability doesn't arrive like a victory. It returns quietly. Leah stood on the production floor early that morning, watching the first shift come in. Boots on concrete, coffee in paper cups, routine, uninterrupted. Ben walked past her, paused, gave a small nod, everything lined up today. Leah nodded back. Good, that was enough, no speeches, no reassurances, just work. She turned and walked back toward the admin wing. Marisol met her halfway, holding a new folder. Not tense this time, just focused. Board update draft. Leah took it, flipped through. Revised governance structure. Dual authorization on any asset movement. Independent review on financing. Clear separation between operational control and ownership decisions. She read each line slowly. Because this was the real outcome. Not just undoing what happened. Building something that made it harder to happen again. Leah closed the folder. Make sure this gets implemented, not just approved. Marisol nodded, already started. Of course she had. That was how things survived, not by reacting, by adapting. Leah stepped into her office, set the folder down, then paused. Because something felt different again. Not pressure, not urgency, space. Real space. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mother. "He's asking for you." Leah didn't wait this time. She went straight to the hospital. Her father was sitting up when she walked in, not just awake, present. He looked older, but clearer. Stronger in a quieter way. Leah stepped closer. He watched her, then asked, "It's done." Leah nodded. "Yeah." He studied her face, like he was looking for something more than just the answer. Then he asked the question that mattered. Did we lose anything? Leah took a breath. Answered honestly, we almost did. He nodded slowly, then looked away for a moment. Processing. Then back at her, and now. Leah didn't hesitate. Now we fix how it works. Not just who runs it, that was the difference. He understood that. She could see it. He reached out. She took his hand. Still steady, still real. You did the right thing. Leah didn't respond right away, because for a long time she wasn't sure what the right thing was. Not in the moment. Not when everything was moving too fast. But now she did. Not because she won, because she stayed on what was true. She nodded once, then stood. I'll handle the rest. He let go. Trusted. Simple. Complete. Leah left the room. Walked down the hallway. Past nurses. Past quiet conversations. Past everything that had nothing to do with what she had just held together. Outside, the air felt different again. Not lighter, clearer. She got into her car. Leah didn't start the engine right away. Her hands rested on the steering wheel, still for the first time in days. For a moment, everything was quiet. No calls, no messages, no one trying to take something from her. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down. A message from the hospital, short. Your father is asking for both of you. Leah froze. Not from fear, from something heavier. She drove back. Faster this time. The hallway felt longer than before, brighter, colder. When she stepped into the room, Vanessa was already there, standing on the other side of the bed, not speaking, not moving. Their father looked between them. Eyes clearer than they had been all week. He didn't ask about the company, he didn't ask about the court. He asked something simpler, but harder. Why didn't you trust each other? The room went still. Leah didn't answer. Vanessa didn't either, because there was no clean answer to that. Only silence. Their father looked at Leah, then at Vanessa, then closed his eyes for a moment. Not tired, disappointed. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet. I built something for you to protect, not to take from each other. Leah felt it land, not like a lesson, like a weight. Because for the first time, it wasn't about winning. It was about what almost got broken. She looked at Vanessa, really looked. And for a second, she saw it. Not ambition, not control, fear, the same kind she had felt, just handled differently. Leah exhaled slowly, then said the only thing that still mattered. We fix it, not the company, us. Vanessa didn't answer right away. Then finally, a small nod. Not agreement, not forgiveness, but something real. Their father relaxed slightly. Not because everything was solved, but because, for the first time, they were standing on the same side of the damage. Leah stepped back. Didn't say anything else. Because some endings aren't loud. They're quiet, but they stay.